So today I just wanted to take a look at 1970s multiple Maniacs. This is an American black comedy which was edited, written, produced, and directed by John Waters. So he obviously played a heavy hand in this film. You also have regulars such as Devine, Mary Pierce, David Lochry, Meek Stoll, Edith Massey. We also have George Figs and Cookie Miller. So we are obviously dealing with a limited or minimal cast because this is obviously a independent film. It was honestly funded by John Waters' parents, which he later paid back with interest, of course. But just a sign of how limited the budget was here. You have various cast members playing numerous background roles as well as minor character roles. So I know one of the early scenes you do have like 3 of the young women who are wearing short-haired wigs because they obviously do not have short hair, and they are playing, I guess you could say, more of like the square or the straight characters that are guided into the cavalcade of perversions. So we have Devine, who is the owner of this lovely establishment. It is a free show, and a lot of the time they have to drag people in to watch because no one willingly wants to go in there. But apparently they have such attractions as a puke eater, a bicycle seat licker, and a bra sniffer, among many other types of interests, I guess you could say, featured under one tent. But very interestingly enough, the opening scene which introduces us to Lady Devine is a very Rubenesque scene, so it obviously draws inspiration from Sir Peter Paul Rubens, obviously, who is better known for his depictions of the larger female form, obviously viewing the female form as an object of beauty. And of course, during that time period, being a larger person was a sign of wealth. Obviously, the poor could not afford to eat very well and were very thin. So that is definitely a sign of its time, but there is a very obvious reference here in that scene in which we meet Lady Devine, because she is just lazily reclined on a chase, and the way this scene is shot, even though it's just a very basic and a simplistic shot, yes, we do see that, yes, she is a beautiful person. It's a very flattering scene in the way that it was handled and shot. There's obviously nothing obscene or tasteless about it, but obviously she is the proprietor of this establishment, and we do witness that, like, as the ending finale of the show. Everyone basically just robs the patrons. So Lady Devine, having grown bored with all of these antics for some odd reason, randomly decides to just kill them, just because. And of course, Mr. David, who is her lover, has pretty much just lost interest in her, I guess basically because of this, and he wants to move on. Obviously, the person who blows the whistle on this budding romance would be Edith Massey's character, and to my understanding, this is the first John Waters picture in which she makes an appearance. But there's a rather random scene. We have Lady Devine walking down the street. She's wearing a very, I guess what nowadays would be considered a rockabilly style, just looking very va-va-voom. And she is cornered and raped by a pair of glue sniffers. Following that event, she is guided by the Child of Prague. So this little chap takes her hand, walks her across the street, takes her to a church in which she meets another woman who makes love to her with a rosary. And this scene, once again, even though it can be quite laughable, maybe even just a bit exaggerated, but it's not tasteless. It's not necessarily an issue where, obviously, it's John Waters. You have to give some leniency there because, you know, we all know the reputation, and if you don't know any better, well, then you deserve what you walked into. But this very particular scene just, and it very much reminds me of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which is very obviously a song which describes sex as a religious experience. And this scene is very much the embodiment of that, as Lady Devine is being made love to. Her partner is discussing the stations of the cross. This leads us into a reenactment of the crucifixion, and once again we do see these same play actors, you know, just taking on different roles. But it's definitely very interesting, and I'm not sure if that's actually what they were trying to draw upon, but yes, they're implying that a change is taking place. There is some sort of movement going into action. Obviously, something higher thinking-wise other than the obvious movement that we're viewing on scene. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was just a very interesting scene. I mean, if you're willing to give it a higher level of thought, I mean, there definitely is a lot to explore in this very particular scene, as far as how she grows and changes as a person, basically just becomes reborn, if you will. But yeah, it's definitely very interesting, to me at least. But obviously in the ending sequence of the film, Lady Devine is once again raped, this time by the monstrous lobstora, who really is not explained into the story. It's just some phantom lobster, I guess you could say. And it is a large metal lobster. You can see in some scenes the person underneath the lobster puppet that is operating it during the lobster sex scene. As the lobster pulls away and crawls off screen, you can see that some of its legs do stay behind on the couch. So this little lobster was obviously not very durable, but he serves his purpose. So to my understanding, the whole, I guess, premise of Lobstora is obviously when John Waters and crew were tripping, basically, they all kind of entered into this, I guess you could say, shared psychosis in which they became fearful of a lobster coming after them. So this is pretty much why this creature is even introduced into the film. Other than just, you know, like some random act, to my understanding, it really doesn't have any real purpose. Obviously, I did brush over that whole love triangle between Mr. David, who has moved on to another love interest, and Lady Devine's issue of growing as a person, but also playing the scorned lover. Obviously, if you've seen any soap opera or read any romance novels, you definitely know the dramatic mess that all draws into. But if you do have interest in watching the film, I'm just going to leave that brushed over. I'm not going to go into any detail there. If you want to know, then obviously you can pursue that on your own time. But I definitely would recommend this. It's definitely a lot of fun. To my understanding, it's the first official Waters film also that actually featured proper sound. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this film very much. A thing that I would like to mention just really quick is the opening credits scene. So these are obviously handwritten credits. You basically have a very long unfurled sheet of shelving paper that they just use to write this on, and there's a very slight segment on there where you can see a bit of paper was kind of cut out and glued over in order to include a correction. What I really like about this particular opening here is the fact that Criterion, when they re-released multiple Maniacs, they recreated the same sequence for their ending credits, And they also included a faux correction, sort of, I guess you can say, in homage or in respect of John Waters' work. So I like the fact that they took the time to actually duplicate that, rather than, just give it more of a modernized film closing sequence. But yeah, I thought that was definitely very cool of them. Just something I wanted to mention just very quickly. But that is pretty much all my thoughts on Multiple Maniacs. I definitely found it a very enjoyable film. Those of you who have seen it, I would love to discuss this further with you. But that is pretty much all I have for you guys today, and I will talk to you later.